Thank you, Chairman Brown and Ranking Member Scott, for having this hearing. And I want to thank all of you for your testimony, and thank you for being here. My guess is last night, probably the only two people that slept well were Harper and Sue. But thank you all for being here. This morning, the good senator from North Carolina, Senator Tillis, and I are calling for an independent, comprehensive investigation into the recent bank failures. The stress these recent failures put on our financial system is having negative effects on community financial institutions, small business, hardworking families. And I believe we must get to the bottom of the recent failures to ensure our financial system isn't left on the hook for risky behavior by reckless executives and lackluster agency oversight. This is a question for all of you, and you can nod or raise your hand. Would all of you support an independent review?
Yes, Senator.
We've been clear that we welcome
Okay.
additional reviews of all kinds.
All right, good. Let the record reflect. It's unanimous. Mr. Barr, I want to read you some your testimony, and then I want to ask you what this means. It's on the third page in my copy anyway. Finally, the fourth key takeaway is the Federal Reserve Board tailoring approach in response to the Economic Growth, Regulatory Relief, and Consumer Protection Act and a shift in stance of supervisory policy impeded effective supervision by reducing standards, increasing complexity, and promoting a less assertive supervisory approach. Absent these changes, SVB would have been subject to supervision within the LFBO portfolio and subject to heightened standards beginning in 2019 throughout the bank's period of rapid growth. Is it fair to say that every bank would have been subject to those same standards, not just SVB, but everybody?
Sir, I was referring to the approach based on the size of the asset class of institution. So other banks that were of a higher asset size would also have been subject to that rule, but not every bank.
No, but everybody in that asset size. So let me ask you this. Fundamentally, do you believe that the regulation should fit the risk?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay. So if you looked at 2155, which is the other name for the longer title I just read, isn't it pretty clear the tailoring is allowed, even to the smallest community bank? If they had a risky portfolio, you could drop the hammer on them, as the chairman said, correct?
We have ample discretion under S 2155 to take a risk-based approach to supervision.
Thank you for that. So the question becomes, Vice Chair Barr, are you going to propose new regulations in response to these failures?
I expect both in response to these failures and our broader review to look at changes in both supervision and regulation going forward.
So, but isn't your report relatively clear that it is not a regulatory failure? That if the tailoring would have been applied correctly, as 2155 talks about, as I believe Congress intended, that this problem could have been stopped?
The report found that both supervision and regulation played a role in contributing to a reduced resiliency at the bank, and we'll be looking at both.
Yeah, but the point is here, and I don't mean to bat you around on this, it's just a matter of fact. I think regulation needs to fit the risk. I think when 2155 was put up, it was put up with the idea that if you had a risky portfolio, regardless of size, that the Fed and the other agencies had the ability to tailor those to whatever threat that those risky business dealings done, right?
Senator, I agree. We're not seeking any change in law from this committee.
Okay.
We believe we have ample authority under existing law to provide a better approach to supervision and regulation going forward, and I am committed to doing that.
So one of my main concerns, and it was one of the things we talked about several years ago, is that I come from a rural state. You know this. I mean, I don't need to tell you guys what's going on here. You guys deal with rural areas, state, we don't have, I mean, there ain't a lot of banks every other block. It ain't walking down the street in LA or New York City, okay? And my concern is that these community banks that don't have a risky portfolio will end up paying the price for a CEO, by the way, that told this committee a couple days ago that they took care of all the problems, and you just pointed out that they had 31 of them that they didn't. So how do you protect the folks who are doing an honest job, providing capital, supporting agriculture, supporting Main Street businesses, supporting working families? How do you protect those? Because in 2008, I stood up here along with Brown and others, and we railed on regulators. We railed and railed and railed because they didn't do their job. And you know what they ended up doing? They ended up regulating the hell out of the banking industry to the point where we made the bigger banks bigger. Talk to me.
I agree with you, Senator. It's absolutely vital that we have a strong and vibrant community banking and regional banking sector as we do today. Community banks around the country and in states all over the country are serving their communities well. And we're highly attentive to that when we think about new approaches here. The kinds of rules that I'm talking about are for large banks, not community banks.
Okay, I just want to make sure that doesn't bleed down, okay? Marty, just one last thing with the chairman's indulgence. Senator Rounds brought up some very good points on
I understand.
a president of a bank who may not have acted appropriately and tried to pad his own pocket. I'm not making that accusation, but as you do your research, I hope you hold them accountable. It sets a very bad form if you don't.
I understand, Senator.